person coming online right now is, oh my God, look at you, goddess.
Hey, love.
This woman, oh my God, Makhosi, I love you so much. I met Makhosi last October at an event put on by Cynthia Stant. We became instant friends. I told the story yesterday for those of you who were there. When I was on with Yannick, I met Yannick through Makhosi because I asked her what could I do for her? And she's one of the very few humans who asked back to me, what can I do for you? And I wanted to meet an extraordinary group of peers, and she introduced me to Yannick. And from then we've become friends, and I just admire your work and I admire what you do. And the reason I asked you to be part of this summit is because you approach abundance from such a beautiful way. I just got off a conversation with Brian, my best friend, ex-boyfriend, roommate, and we have an abundant relationship that is so unusual. And abundance shows up in so many different ways. So I'm excited for you to be here. I'd love for you to introduce yourself, and then let's get into a great conversation.
Absolutely. I'm so honored to be here, so excited, and love just having you in my life. I'm so grateful for I have an abundance of amazing individuals, and you are one of them. I am Makhosi, also known as the Royal Shaman in public spaces. And I really am all about what I call a process of euphoric evolution, which is an energetic process that aligns your identity with your higher self. And that ultimately creates an incredibly abundant life. Now, when I say abundant, yes, wealth is a part of that. But also when I'm talking about abundance, I'm speaking about all of the different forms it can show up in relationships, in opportunities, in the way that you feel in your clothes and your environment, so on and so forth. So I am really focused on aligning the inner world to create an abundant outer world.
How good does that feel? And it really goes with the theme that we've been in all day today, which is, we had Gabby talking about subconscious mind and how you connect to the deepest unwounded part of you. And then Brian and I talked about unwounded relationships, essentially. And now we're talking about the energy dynamic of this abundance. So we've been kind of approaching this. You see the theme of the day. It's very powerful. So Makhosi, can you tell us a little bit about your origin story? I would love to have people know what that is.
Yeah, my origin story, I say it's almost like I had 3 lives that were going on simultaneously for most of my life. And then they all kind of converged. And now I live a very holistic, integrated existence. But as a young girl, I grew up, my mother was a single mom of 2, and she was a teen mom. And I also grew up in small town, Southern West Virginia. So there was a lot of challenges, number one, around poverty, as well as, racism. It was a hot mess of a childhood, but there were a few key things that I was experiencing that were kind of rooting me. One of those things was my introduction into entrepreneurship at a really young age. So my very first experience selling, I was 9 years old. I was selling rhubarb pies at the Amish market. I have Amish family that I lived with, by the way, Amish Mennonite, let me be specific. And then also simultaneously, I was having spiritual experiences and didn't really know what to do with that. And then the third version of me was this version who was trying to fit in, even though I knew deep down that I just couldn't fit in. There were just too many things that were not the norm about me.
I'm just thinking about what you're saying. It's like, I'm Black, single mom, poverty, Amish, rhubarb pie. It's just hard to imagine. And West Virginia, I forgot that part. Unbelievable. Okay, continue. This story is incredible.
Yeah. So in my early preteen, teenage years, I had some very traumatic experiences. Really, my spiritual journey started with, or really culminated with my best friend's murder at 15 years old. So up to that point, I had been having some spiritual experiences. I started reading tarot very young. And when my best friend died at such a young age, I went in. I had already been having some awareness about why is it that people do the things that they do and trying to understand psychology. But that moment I went in, I kind of had a year of silence. I didn't really talk for a year, which for me was very, very different.
Like literally not talk?
Like literally, I didn't speak much at all. At school, I didn't speak at all, completely withdrew and just went in for that year. I also started experiencing some health issues. So I go on about my life. I'm trying to navigate all of these health issues, and simultaneously there's the version of me who's trying to fit in. She's the one who, she's trying to get all A's, be top of her class. Oh, I need to go to college because I cannot be a statistic. My mom was a single mom. I knew about like what was kind of predestined statistically for me. And I was like, that's not going to be me. So I'm really high achieving and also having these challenges with my health. And then this other version of me who starts now seeing non-physical beings, starting with my best friend. She came to me the night that she passed. And my gifts are growing, my spiritual gifts. But I'm in West Virginia.
That freaked you out? I mean, your best friend's murdered and they come to you that night? Were you like,
Yeah, I didn't know what to do with it. Like I was pinching myself. I'm like blinking, rubbing my eyes, like, what is this? And then she started communicating with me telepathically. And I was like, oh, okay. So not only did I realize like this is real, this is actually happening, but also I had had all of these other experiences, mainly with like animals, seeing spirit animals before that, and just knowing certain things about people. And I was like, oh, wow. So I was not just, you know, fooling myself, tricking myself, but then I couldn't really talk about it. Right. Because, well, I did talk about it to my psychologist, and that ultimately ended up with them putting me on prescription medication. Right. But all of that said, I ended up going through college. I'm still working in business in a lot of different ways: sales, marketing, management.
you say that so fluidly. Are you the first person in your family that ever went to college?
Um, am I the first person? I'm actually not the first person. So my Amish Mennonite great uncle.
Amish Mennonite great uncle. Got it?
So that side of my family, my great uncle did go to college. I will say I am the first millionaire in my family. Um, for sure, that's happened. And of course, I'm very young. I haven't even hit 35 yet. So that's an
Amazing.
incredible thing. But college, I'm still high achieving. I'm like, I'm going to go to med school, but also I'm going to fall back. I got 2 degrees in business and marketing management as my backup plan if I didn't get into med school. So I get to my senior year and planning to go to med school, had some fertility issues. And my doctor was like, hey, if you ever want to have a child, you probably want to start soon. I had been with my now husband for a few years already at that point. So we try very hard to get pregnant. It takes a long time. And then I get pregnant and I have a very difficult pregnancy. I have difficulty staying pregnant. And then I had a very close to death experience after he was born, where I developed postpartum preeclampsia. And I will say that spirit saved my life because it literally woke me up. A voice woke me up at 4 o'clock in the morning and said, get up, get dressed, go to the hospital. And I didn't even feel like there was anything wrong. But I get up and I go to the hospital.
And you listened.
And I listened. And my husband didn't question it. Incredible. As soon as we get there, they take my blood pressure. They're like, oh, they immediately took me back and started treating me because my blood pressure was like, I should have been in a coma, the level that my blood pressure was.
Oh my God.
So I had this experience of becoming a mom in my last couple years of school, the difficulty getting pregnant, the difficulty staying pregnant, then almost dying after giving birth. And I had 1 semester of school left before going to med school. And this little boy came and I was like, there's no way. There's absolutely no way I can leave him and go study, be, working all these hours. Like, I just wanted to be with him. So I ended up working at Target and not going to med school.
How old were you when you had him? Maybe 22?
23.
23, okay.
Yeah. So I was 23. I end up working at Target, my magna cum laude self with 2 degrees in business, 2 bachelors, business and marketing management. And
what a story. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that was not for me. But I ended up getting into direct sales because this drive to want to, like, my inner truth was that I wanted to be mom. Like, I wanted to be a very present mom. And that started to be my inner, like, my GPS. I started following that, even though it looked crazy to people. Like, wait, think about it. Now it sounds awesome, right? Like, oh, you were working at Target and then you left and did da 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 da. But no, when you are planning to go to med school, everyone knows that. And then you're like, no, I'm not going to go to med school. I'm going to actually work at Target instead.
And the way society looks at us, it's like, oh, well, you failed.
Yeah.
You gave up. You're no longer seeing the vision. You're not being the future her.
Yeah. That was the judgment.
So what did you do?
So I ended up deciding, because of this inner GPS, wanting to be with my son. I ended up working in direct sales. And this was my first time, like, really finding my groove. I skyrocketed to success in the company that I was in, top 1% of the company within 9 months. And
wow.
Yeah, it was a really incredible experience in many great ways. I loved working with the women that I did. It was a lot of fun. And even though I had, at that point, I'm like 24 years old, I have what everyone says is success. I've got the hot, tall, dark, and handsome husband. I've got the kid, the white picket fence. I'm part of a company where I'm in the top. So they're flying me out to Vegas for free trips and mansion parties and designer handbags and everything that everyone says, when you reach this, you will be fulfilled. And I
made it.
I wasn't. I made it, but I wasn't fully fulfilled. I knew I'm not living up to my greatest potential. Like, this is just scratching the surface. And I started to ask the universe different questions. I started to ask questions, not about how can I get to the next level? How can I get success? How can I get, the 100,000, $500,000, $1 million a year? I started asking, who am I here to be? Like, what is my greatest potential? And the universe started bringing signs, synchronicities, people into my life. And that's where I really started on my spiritual journey. And I entered into initiation. I started traveling back and forth to Africa, really going in depth in spirituality, in energetics. And ultimately that culminated in me completing, after 5 years of initiation, completing my ceremonies, becoming a shaman, a Zulu shaman to be specific, a Sangoma, but I'm also what's called a Sanusi. And a Sanusi is really one who is a spiritual teacher, or like what the Hindus would call like the guru type of energy.
And what was it like to be an American girl, woman, going and hanging out with Zulu tribes and going through an initiation? It must have been like a coming home and a culture shock at the same exact time.
Yeah, I would say that it is number one, just in general, the initiation process is extremely difficult because it's not just learning some stuff. Initiation in that format is a process of deconditioning, of breaking down everything that you thought that you were, so that the truth of who you are can come forth and be born and be embodied on this plane. So it is so hard. There's physical challenges that are part of the process, but also the biggest hurdle in it is just thinking that you are one way and thinking that there are certain truths in this reality, and then challenging those and allowing those parts of you to essentially die so that another version of you can come forth. It is.
And for those of you who've heard the parrot story I told in the opening ceremony about the parrot who had to die to truly live and to get out of the cage that he was being held in, this is that same story. It's this idea of the ego death, the death card in the tarot, that if you want to find out who you are so you can get to the I am without the ego, trying to strip away all the layers of the ego so that you can actually feel and be present in the presence, in the God consciousness, in the source consciousness. That's what I'm hearing you talk about, Makhosi, and dang, that's not easy work.
No, it is not at all easy. However, I'm so grateful because it gave me a very, you could say I have a very avant-garde perspective on things because of my upbringing and my transition into more ancient spiritual systems. I'm not a person who believes that, oh, we should just take on the ancient ways. I'm really a person who sees and bridges how to take ancient knowledge, knowings, etc., and use it in a very contemporary way for life now. And that couldn't have happened if I didn't go through those challenges and break my lens so that I could take on a new one, a multifaceted one.
So what does it mean to be the royal shaman?
Well, there's multiple layers to the royal shaman. Number one, that's essentially what Makhosi means. So when I completed my initiation, Makhosi is a title that some of us carry. There's a few different types of titles, but Makhosi translates in Zulu to chief or king, but it also is speaking specifically about, it can also be about a specific type of healer, right? So Makhosi itself.
So you changed your name.
So I actually still have my original birth name. I just have many names.
I love many names. I could go do that.
It's really common in African spiritual systems to have lots of different names, because all of your names, your name has a frequency. It has an energetic signature that every time you hear it, it is calling forth you to be in that destiny. Yeah, I just imagine. Go ahead.
I was at the PT the other day, and she told me that her brother had a daughter and they named the daughter Lily. And Susan or Suzanne means lily in the ancient Aramaic. And I was like, maybe I'm going to change my name to Lily. I literally said this 2 days ago. I think I'm just going to have a couple more names. I love that. How many names do you guys have? I want more names. All right, I'm just obsessed right now. Continue, please. What does
Yeah,
it mean
so
to be the royal?
the royal shaman means, so it has that connotation about me, but it also is speaking to who I am here to impact, who I'm here to serve. So I call the leaders that I support, that I create, we call them royals, because in my perspective, we are in this shift where leadership is going back to the original, the ancient meaning of what it is to be royal. To be royal is to be responsible, to be conscious and aware. It used to be that we would select the most spiritual, the most aligned people for leadership. And I see that that's happening right now. So yes, I might be the royal shaman, but it's also speaking to how I am a teacher, mentor, advisor to the new royal leaders.
That is so good. Because, the word royal can have so many unfortunate connotations too, especially with all the craziness that's been going on in England lately, or in the UK, and what it means to be royal, when it means to be called Your Royal Highness, and to know that there's this whole other definition that's available to us. It's very relieving, actually. I love that as a concept. So do royals embody abundance? What does it mean to be royal?
Yeah, so there's so many different layers to this, but a royal is a person who chooses to take responsibility first and foremost to themselves. And then from that, then takes the responsibility for those around him or her. Most of the time right now, it's her. And it is the queendom that is very all-encompassing of her family, her community, and even becoming aware of how her decisions are having a ripple effect. We do have this desire for impact, but for me, from my perspective, impact is not something you do. It's not something you go out and do. It is who you are every single day that is creating the impact. And ultimately, that's what leads to your legacy. It's not, oh, once I have this business, or once I have this large following, or once I have this, these stages, then I will be able to create impact and legacy. No. When you got up this morning and you made a cup of coffee, that decision created an impact. When you got up and you brushed your teeth, how you did that was making an impact, right? So it's about becoming and bringing awareness to who we are being in each and every moment that ultimately creates abundance. Now, abundance, like we said at the beginning, isn't just the money, but it is the ability to be fully present and fulfilled in the unfolding, in the becoming of who we are, not when I get the $1 million business, then I'll be fulfilled, happy, impactful. No, it is bringing the awareness here right now that actually this is what exists.
What's so interesting? Every single one of our speakers has, at the end of the day, come down to it's about self. And, it's not because we're selfish. It's because from knowing self, it is the best springboard to knowing other, to being part of community. to be part of solutions. And so I'd love for you to talk about, this conference is a lot about the future of her and the balanced masculine and feminine energetics that take us forward, not just being laid back as a goddess, hoping and praying that everything's going to work out, and not being in our masculine energy, doing so hard that we actually burn out, but this balanced feminine masculine energy that allows us to play in the both. And I know that you lead from the yin, from the feminine. Can you share with everybody how you got there and what that actually means?
Yeah. For me, in the process of my spiritual journey of really shedding all of the versions of myself that I thought I had to be in order to be successful, in order to be accepted, in order to be insert whatever, it came down to who am I authentically? And so I started realizing that our societies put such emphasis and glorification on the masculine or the yang aspects that most of our potential, if you think about this on a linear scale, right? If you spend, let's say, all of your time in this yang energy, well, where is the rest of your potential? The rest of your potential then is by learning how to navigate and embrace and work with your yin. Now, a lot of people get confused because I do talk about yin energy a lot and think that I'm only about that. And that's not the case. It's about—
You wouldn't be successful if it was the case.
1000, like as a woman, I have a lot of yang energy. It's the energy that allows for us to lead. It's the energy for us to plan. It's the energy for us to structure things and actually follow through on them. It's absolutely necessary, period. We don't want to demonize it.
Strategy. Let's just call that one out right now too, because there's this whole thing in feminine energetics that strategy is a dirty word. And I'm like, every single woman out there who's making 7 figures online or anywhere else uses strategy. They just might not tell you.
1000.
And I know you are very strategic.
Yes. I mean, strategy is it is my genius zone. It's just that before I was looking at strategy as a template to copy, like, oh, what is that person's strategy because it got her to this, so I just need to do that and that will get me there. No, that's not gonna work, because if it was, then everyone who is using that copied template would be successful. Strategy has to be in service to who you are here to be, who you actually are, right? Like right now there's a desire for leaders to be quote unquote relatable and to share lots and lots and lots. However, my authentic self is actually quite private, and vulnerability is also not my jam. So if I go and then I try to have this strategy where I'm trying to be relatable and vulnerable, it's going to feel off because it's not true to me. So strategy is incredibly important, but it needs to align with who you are, with who you're here to be. Right?
Exactly.
So good. So that's why.
So we're talking about the linear spectrum. I took you off track. Apologies.
Yes, sorry. But that's an example, like it's actually a perfect example of being yin first, right? So the yin aspect of you is going to go inward, right? And then the yang aspect is going to take that inner and bring it out. How can we now express that? So it's both and. I find though that the reason I have to talk about yin more is because so many women are completely out of whack because they are like 95% of the time in their yang energy.
Yep.
And the yin energy holds abundance, your magnetism, your uniqueness, your depth, your holistic perspective. Like, it holds up your ability to surrender. That is where it lives. So I talk about flow because flow is ultimately our desired state. That is a sign that we are on our path, that we are in our unfolding and in our abundance. Flow is a natural way that comes about. But flow is not just sitting on the couch, laid back, waiting for when are my men servants going to come with my grapes and give me everything, right? It's not that. And it's also not what the biohacker bros say flow is, as being like this peak state that you're trying to control and contort yourself to have like a 20-minute flow session.
Seriously, do you remember the days, maybe you don't, where there's a book that was like, eat this combination of foods and you will be in flow. And then when the flow goes down, eat the same combination. And you had this whole way of trying to mechanically create flow. And I want to just explain what flow means to me, and maybe some of you will relate. Because I think Makhosi has a lot to add about this, but people ask me all the time, what is flow? And if you're the kind of person where you go on vacation and you're like, I want us to plan some spontaneous things. I want us to plan to be spontaneous. I'm sorry. Or if you're the person at breakfast who's worried about where you're going to have lunch, or you're at lunch worried about where you're going to have dinner, this is not flow. Flow is the spontaneity happens. You get an urge, a nudge, a whisper, and you're flowing towards that next thing. We talked about the difference between motivation and inspiration in this conference. Motivation being I'm setting a goal and I'm going for it. Inspiration meaning that the thought or the idea grabs you and your heart and it takes you on the journey. That's flow. This is not. Motivation is not flow. Inspiration is flow. How do you express flow, Makhosi? And what does that mean in terms of creating abundance through the yin energy, through the flow energy?
Yeah. Flow is a paradox. It's a paradoxical energy. It is inactive action. It is movement that is still, right? It is when you lose yourself. Literally, the ego, the identity of you dissolves and you become one with the action that you are doing. So this happens, like right now I'm in a flow state. My mind is not thinking about anything else. I'm not thinking about what's going to happen for lunch or what happened yesterday when, you and I maybe, actually it wasn't yesterday when we met, but a couple days ago when we caught up, right? It is being completely present, and it is actually an active state. Flow is not doing nothing, although sometimes if you've been in a process of just doing, you actually need to do nothing in order to bring back some harmony into your being. But in my perspective, flow is our natural state. It's our natural way of being. And ultimately, my goal for all of my clients is that they live in flow, not have a 20-minute experience of flow, but that their entire existence majority of time, because we're human, but 80% is living in flow, a flow state. And
I
that,
love how you call this a paradox. Sorry, please finish.
no, go ahead.
I just love that you call this a paradox, because it really is a paradox. Because we talked in this past 2 days about we are spiritual beings having a human experience. And as Michael Bernard Beckwith calls it, it's a parenthesis in time that you are in this human form. Your soul has been flowing for millennia. It has had so many different experiences, and it needed to incarnate into human form for whatever's here for it during this lifetime. And so every once in a while, we catch that beautiful feeling. It feels like we're surfing from wave to wave to wave. It's just glorious. There is no thinking. I call it the vestibule of now. How we be in the vestibule of now, not living in the past, not worrying about the future, but in this present moment. It's gorgeous. But the paradox is we're human. And we worry about things. And we worry about making money. And we worry about having enough money. And we worry about where our kids are going to school. And we worry about what's happening with our partner. And we worry about whether we feel supported or not, or I feel too fat, or I feel too thin, or I feel too this, or I feel too that. And we have a mind that's job, Eckhart Tolle calls it the pain body. Its job is to distract you from flow. How do we get there?
Yeah.
Especially if we're trying to be large and in charge as women and make money and have our own empires. How do we do it?
Yeah. Well, there's a few very grounded, practical ways that we can do this. And it all really does stem from awareness, because most of us are doing things unconsciously. I mean, that's being human. We do things unconsciously, but bringing awareness to those things that we are doing unconsciously. And also we can look at what are the things that when I'm doing them, I lose myself in them. That's giving you clues to who you're here to be. What is in flow for you versus from a business perspective, right? There is creating content from a place of this is an expression, this is just an expression of who I am, versus, well, the algorithm said I need to create 20 pieces of content. And so I need to go and I'm going to sit and I'm going to create 20 pieces of content so that I can do da 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 da. The focus there is externally to get versus to give or to express, right? So we can start paying attention to where am I naturally able to just give and express? Where am I able to drop the comparison to everyone else, comparison to what I think I should be doing, so on and so forth, and actually be in those activities and allow ourselves to do more of them by saying no to some of the other things. So saying no, in fact, I encourage all women, because we've all been heavily indoctrinated to say yes to everything, to try on saying no to everything.
Ooh, I love that.
And then feel into, do I genuinely desire to give? Do I genuinely desire to express in this way? Then say yes. Like, people will kind of be put off by it, but I really don't care. When people will ask, hey, will you pass the salt? I say no. And then I feel into, do I want to pass them the salt? I do. I want them to have salt on their food. And then I will say yes, and I'll hand them the salt, right? So
I love that.
it's so small, but really, like, starting, this is another very practical way that you can do this. Apply this in really small ways first. I know that there's like the bro marketers have been like, you got to go big or go home. If you're not all in, you know what I mean? Like, it's okay to start being different in the small ways first,
Mm.
especially the ways that like don't really matter. No one's going to stop being your friend because you didn't pass the salt to them, right? But if you are just testing this out, it might be scary to say no to coming to a friend's baby shower, right? Like that could be
Mhm.
scary. So
Yeah.
practicing by saying no to the things that you're just doing just because you think you have to do them, and then consciously choosing what you're saying yes to, and changing the amount of time that you are just doing things because you think you should or you have to what are the things that you get to do, and that being the majority of
Mm.
your day.
I love this so much because in the opening today, this morning, I was talking about the difference between self-worth and self-confidence. And we kind of did a 2x2 matrix of one path is self-worth and one is self-confidence. And if you have low self-worth and low self-confidence, you never move.
Mm.
And if you have high self-worth and low self-confidence, you're constantly saying yes and people pleasing and overgiving and all the things that one can do from that perspective. And what I'm hearing you say that I think is so beautiful is that in order to move out of that position, is part of growing your self-confidence is saying no. Part of becoming the version of you that is the realist version of you is actually allowing yourself to separate from the matrix, separate from what society tells us is the polite right thing to do. If there's a family event and you really do not want to go, I want to be the one to tell you you don't have to go. And I know Makhosi believes this with me. That's legally flow. It's doing the things that feel good for you. Wayne Dyer says, avoid thoughts that weaken you. Because we focus on the weakening stuff so much that we lose conscious contact with the divinity within us and the divinity outside of us. So as you guys are thinking about some questions that you want to drop in here from Makhosi, and I encourage you to do that in the chat, I would love for you to take this to the wealth conversation. I think it's really important that we tap on it. I actually asked you to be part of the track of the conference that is about getting shit done and making money, which when you look at the royal shaman and the goddessy energy all around you, I was like, Suzanne, why did you ask Makhosi in this track? And it's because you actually wrote this. You're like, I'm so glad you asked me to be in this track, because we don't expect it. And yet you're a wealthy woman. You're the first millionaire in your family. And so I'd love you to take this yin conversation into the wealth creation, the wealth energetics for us.
Yes. Yes. It's funny because a lot of people don't expect that a shaman would be talking about these topics, but it's funny. I got dubbed the nickname, the get shit done shaman, publicly, like, like Entrepreneur Magazine and CNBC, and on the
Oh my
doc,
God.
they called me the get shit done shaman. And I know that what we were just talking about can seem very yin and in the feminine, but also look at how this can play out in very real wealth building ways. So for example, what I just said was to say no to all of the things that you feel that you have to do, should do, etc., and only say yes to the things that are in flow. What this ultimately does is it puts you in your zone of genius. It puts you in a party of one. Like there's only one of you who is able to do this unique combination of activities, right? And be the version of you with all the characteristics that come along with that, right? Like, are there other people who talk about energetics? Yes, I am not the only one. However, I am the only one who's going to do it with like this badass, like red, kind of fiery, edgy avant-garde top, and also a way of speaking that is very direct and assertive, right? So from a wealth building perspective, we build wealth not by being the best. There are a lot of people out there, and I think you know some of them, who are really the best at what they do, who are broke. We actually build wealth and can build wealth with ease when we focus on our uniqueness. What makes us uniquely us. We cannot do that when we are trying to say yes to all of the things that we're just kind of mediocre in, or, we're just doing them to just get it done. This drastically changes your ability to, number one, charge higher and more aligned pricing, because you are literally going to be doing what you are uniquely qualified to do versus.
You guys captain what she's putting down. Are you picking it up? Because this is good shit, ladies. Grab this. I want you to say it again one more time. You are making when you're in your zone of genius, when you're being the most you.
When you're being the most you, when you are in your flow, your zone of genius, this is when you are at your highest value in the market, right? This is when you become a singular, like there's not another option, really. There's not, because if someone resonates with you, they resonate with you in all of those facets, not just, are you good at what you do, right? So this makes your positioning, this makes your content on fire. But our biggest obstacle to that, the biggest thing that stands in our way, are the things that we are good at, that maybe we had to work hard to get good at. So there's an attachment from our ego about being seen as that. Like, I'll give you an example. I, for a while, struggled with talking about some of these things because I was in initiation for 5 years and it was hard. And I had an attachment to, no, I'm a shaman. I'm a shaman and I'm good at this, right? But that is not my zone of genius. It is actually taking some of those aspects and then bridging it with these very like grounded, practical ways of tapping into higher levels of consciousness and your potential and your performance, right? So the only ways that we can really start tapping into that is by saying no to more and really refining and simplifying the things that we are doing. Most of us are doing entirely too much, and that's what keeps us from the next level in wealth.
Yeah, totally agree. There are a couple questions I want us to get to. We have 10 minutes left. So while I'm looking through the questions to pull them up for you, you mentioned briefly, and I'd love you to go in a little deeper about it. When you are in flow, you can charge for your value as opposed to charging what you think people will be willing to pay. Can you speak a little bit more to that? Because I know this is a question a lot of people have.
Yeah. So we often project our own judgment about our worth onto other people. I think someone would pay XYZ. We get into other people's pocketbooks, as we used to call them, right? We get into other people's pocketbooks instead of actually looking at and detaching a little bit. We need to detach a little bit from our perspective of ourselves and solely look at who is the person that I'm serving and what is it that I am doing for them And what is that worth to that person, not what I think it's worth. The problem with where people get really stuck in this is it is very difficult to see ourselves. It's difficult to see. Ultimately, what we want to do is build a business and build your wealth on the things that are easy to you, the things that are so duh for you that you don't even think anybody would necessarily pay for it because it just comes out so easily. But then when you can detach from it, you can see what the value is of that to the person that already values it.
Oh, and as a person who used to work at Target and probably made, $11 an hour, which we have been taught and trained in this matrix that we trade time for money. And what I work with people on is to understand what they are actually doing is an energetic exchange of value for helping people become who they want to become. And that at the end of the day is priceless. If you have the magic and ability to help people become their truest selves, I don't know how you can put a price tag on that. So why wouldn't we be able to charge at a level when we know that we can help with that transformation? So let me tap into some of these questions. Carrie says, what advice would you give a woman who is working to create funds to invest in a new opportunity?
I've actually been able to invest in lots of things that I was very attached to how I thought I needed to get the money to do blank. And what's really been fun for me in creating wealth is beginning to explore and open up into questioning different pathways, right? So a really great example of this, a group of my friends and I, my entrepreneur friends and I, we bought this incredible $10 million estate in Hawaii called the Waterfalling Estate. If you want to see it, you can go visit the website. It is absolutely incredible, right?
I want to buy in.
It's beautiful. And I'm so excited to get to take some of my clients there, and it's going to be amazing. But if I was going about this in the typical way that people think about it is, okay, if I want to invest in this opportunity, I need to make this amount of money. Where when you start to expand the possibilities of well, how else could I invest in this? Well, number one, instead of buying it myself, I went in with a group of friends and we all have the type of businesses that could benefit from using this type of property because I wouldn't want to live there. And I get the benefits of some ownership, getting to spend time there, and also getting to use it in my business. The other thing as well is, well, maybe I don't have the cash for it. Because by the way, very few investors have cash lying around just waiting to be deployed into whatever. You don't want a ton of cash just sitting around. You want it to be working for you. So getting really creative about, well, what opportunities could bring about this money? Is it an SBA loan? Is it, an exchange with someone else? Is it equity? So on and so forth. So I would say that the best way to go about this is to just open your mind to, well, what are all the different ways that this could come about? Not just, I want to invest in this, I need to make X amount of dollars.
Beautiful. And I will also recommend, Carrie, that Michaela Kieran was here yesterday from Goldman Sachs, and you can tune into her talk about women, wealth, investing, and how all that works. So I would recommend you go over there too. We only have a few more minutes, but I do want to try to get to these two questions. Let's see if we can combine them. Maya says, love this conversation so much. How would you figure out what your true purpose is? And then Jen asked, Makhosi, what shifted energetically for you and how did it feel to do your marketing after the shift? Those are
Ooh,
beautiful. I
yeah.
know they're completely different questions, and Maya, I think we're going to be talking about purpose a little later in the day as well. So perhaps this is not the purpose conversation, but if you go to any of the artists' talks in the agenda, there's a lot of purpose conversation there, especially Yannick Silver from yesterday. So why don't you take Jen's question, and then I'll make sure I reach out to Maya.
Okay, awesome. So the shift, well, there's been quite a few shifts. And keep in mind, I do have a degree in marketing management. So I do have some understanding of psychology, because really marketing is just psychology applied to business. That's really all it is. The main difference for me has been, or the main shift has been, when I shifted out of I need to educate people to how can I invite people to see things differently.
Mm.
So I now see creating content as serving the purpose of shifting perspectives. Because when, like yesterday, somebody sent me a message, she watched a video that I did on money on YouTube. And she was like, I had heard so many things around how, shifting your mindset, so on and so forth. But when I gave her the example, because she had a belief that you need to work hard to make money. And I said, well, how many people do you know that work hard, that are the hardest working people that you know, that don't have money?
Mm.
So obviously working hard is not what makes money. So that shift can literally change the trajectory of her life. I see creating content to be that, where most people see it as teaching how to do XYZ, or, well, right now, dancing. I like dancing, but it's a lot of entertainment. I think it's about, for me, when I embraced what I'm really good at, helping people to see things differently and allowing my content to be that, and that my only real purpose is to shift perspectives and invite people to change their lives. That's all it is.
So good. So good. And you are good at it. Your content is consumable. It's really, really beautiful and fun. And after we met, I just had a blast running through all your stuff. And so if you want to follow Makhosi, you can go to @theroyalshaman on Instagram, and I'm sure they can find you from there. Is there anything else that you want to share about how people can get involved with your world?
Yeah. You can also find my podcast officially launched in the past week. Yay! So Euphoric Evolution is out now on all the major podcast platforms, as well as on YouTube at The Royal Shaman. So definitely check out Euphoric Evolution, the podcast, and I'd love to hear from you on Instagram. Like what landed for you? What really shifted your perspective and opened up possibilities for you?
Mm. I love you so much.
I
This
love you.
was really so fun. I want you to go back. There's some beautiful comments for you that people have just been dropping and dropping, and I just haven't been able to get to them all because this conversation was deep and yummy and delicious. And it really goes with that theme that everybody has been talking about this whole conference. This is unexpected and beautiful, that it always comes back to self and knowing yourself. I love yourself. I'm grateful for your time, for your talent. Thank you for being here. I know you've got a very full and beautiful life. That you carved out time for us is very meaningful to me. So thank you. Mwah. I love you so much.
Love you. Thank you so much for having me. This has been incredible. I'll see you soon.
See you soon, Ben.